from the Crypt.
Hello, boils and ghouls. Welcome to Dads from the Crypt. Today, we're going to be talking about the third issue of Epitaphs from the Abyss from the new EC Comics Oni line. But we also have a very special guest. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Hello. How goes it?
Good, good. So before we get into the comic, I just want to ask you a couple of questions. You know, obviously you're mostly known for that little show about dead people walking around. But you got your start more or less in comic book writing, it seems.
It was sort of a dance between comics and animation. I really wanted to work in comics more than anything. And I actually interned for Marvel Comics when I was a sophomore in college. And it looked like I was on track to maybe even get a job there, but I would have had to quit school. And I lucked out by not pursuing that because the comics industry kind of imploded a little bit after that. It had gotten a little overheated. I still wanted to work in comics, so after college, I tried to find, any comics place in LA. There were only a couple. One of them was Matt Groening's Bongo Comics. And I started working there. And I was basically like an assistant editor. I moved up from like intern to assistant editor. And I was writing, but then I started working in animation for Disney TV animation. And actually, I think like my first like official credit that wasn't the Comics Buyer's Guide, which I don't, that's a deep cut for some of your audience there, but was actually an issue of What If from that summer. Then I had some couple Bongo comics, and then I started working in animation for Disney TV animation. I went on to create my own show called Fillmore, which was sort of the last ABC Saturday morning cartoon. So Simpson stuff, Saturday morning at Disney, and then Walking Dead. It all makes sense.
There we go. Were you so growing up, before you even what were the comics that inspired you to want to get into that industry?
You know what? I was thinking you might ask me about horror, and I don't want to I'll use slang from when I was growing up. I don't want to front. In the, I guess, sort of nerdy pop culture spectrum, horror was never like super high on my list, except in comics. Actually, the only two comics that really hit me, that they hit me hard as far as horror goes, which was Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, which I thought was classic. Brilliant and scary. And then old House of Secrets. I hadn't really discovered EC as a kid. And Harvey Kurtzman and all that. That stuff I came to later. But I was into, I grew up really into like, I think it was 85, 86 was like the big year that sort of led to that. I was into comics years before that, but that was a transformative year of like Watchmen. And, I think Swamp Thing either was still going strong, had just ended his run, but still Stephen Bissett and Rich Tolman, or was it Rick Tolman? Either way, they were still keeping it going. They were terrific. But you had, I think it was 86, like The Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen, and just a host. And then a lot of independent comics were kicking off. And that sort of turned my mind inside out. But I had been reading since 5th grade. And oddly, like my brother and I had this like weird deal. I still don't know what it is or why we did it, but I was only allowed to get DC and he was only allowed to get Marvel. I still don't get it. I like, I snuck all his Marvels away. And X-Men at DC, New Teen Titans, when they crossed over, it was amazing. A lot of Batmans, a lot of like Sergeant Rocks, like Robert Kanigher and Joe Kubert. And yeah, I mean, I basically read whatever I could get my hands on, and every week was going down to the flea market, Watchung Market in New Jersey, and just getting stacks of comics with allowance money or extra money I'd made mowing lawns or stuff like that. And yeah, I just was obsessed with comics and really wanted to pursue that as a career. Yet it may have been, I don't want to say easy, but easier for me to wind up doing these, adapting comics like Ghost Rider and of course Walking Dead and
right.
Yeah, you worked on out there.
Because you also worked on the second Ghost Rider movie? Or was it the first?
Spirit of Vengeance.
Yeah, that's a fun one. That's really fun.
I mean, it's Neville Dean Taylor took the ball and with it and did their signature brand of crazy.
Yeah.
But David Goyer, who another writer, Seth Hoffman, and I were working on a show called Flash Forward with him. Drafted us over into that to help him. And yeah, David is still a friend to this day.
Really?
As is Seth. Yeah. I see David a good amount when he's not in Europe making television shows. But yeah, he's a good guy.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny because I knew that you weren't, as we've been getting to know each other for a while, I knew that you weren't as much of a horror guy. And it's fine. And then the irony of working on, one of the most famous horror shows, but also when going through the Tales from the Crypt, those guys weren't really horror guys per se either. They were more comedy, drama, stage play guys. So it's interesting because the horror is more dressing for the human drama that comes around with it. I mean, that's a whole other conversation we can get to, but I just want to make that observation.
No, that's very much it.
Yeah. So let's dive into today's comic again. Epitaphs from the Abyss number 3. Yes. So the first 2 editions have had the Gravedigger as their kind of main host, and this is the first one to introduce the new character, the Tormentor. And probably my favorite, at least consistently, thing about the first 3 comics have been this opening page. I just love the artwork that they've put into these. And I love, like, especially this one, you're kind of reading it and you've got the Gravedigger and you've got the Tormentor kind of talking to each other. And as you pan down, you see that it's actually a first person point of view, and there's a chest and you're strapped down to a table and there's blood going everywhere. It's a really, really cool perspective shift, especially, because I'm reading it from a PDF that I got, the preview PDF. So you're literally scrolling down for that reveal that makes it even more impactful.
Yeah, like an Infinity comic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the artwork is amazing, and yeah, I do dig Gravedigger and the Tormentor. I also thought I couldn't think of as many, like when it came to EC or just sort of those narrators. I haven't remembered too many women in that role. And
no, there was
kind of cool to see that.
There's one they kind of tried to do a little bit. I'm not the biggest historian, so I know that she wasn't like a mainstay, but it's kind of something they kind of introduced. But yeah, it's definitely cool to have like for that to be a kind of a different take on the character.
Yeah, and she's just horrifying.
Yes.
Looks like she's been like removing teeth, not her own.
Not her own. She's missing. It looks like she might be missing a couple, but she looks like someone that Pinhead would date.
Yeah,
I would ship her and Pinhead.
But not Mary, because the kiss would be difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, actually, I think if you look at her necklace now, okay, for a moment I thought she had a necklace of teeth.
That would be cool, but no.
Yeah,
it's more like a frilly Victorian thing.
Yeah, for going out. But yeah, really cool design on her. Really cool on the Gravedigger, and a lot of like throwback comics can feel like not legit. They don't have the voice.
Mm-hmm.
This felt like the voice. This felt like the time, and that was pretty impressive. So
yeah,
and I'd say that for the whole book. Actually, I think the thing I liked about it the most was the tone felt legit.
Mm-hmm.
It can feel kind of forced sometimes, especially when they're like mentioning modern things, podcasts and things like that, and yet it seemed totally legit. So
yeah,
good on them.
So our first segment story is called A Hand in It, and we are introduced to a woman who works at a morgue, and she has a special room for unclaimed cadavers, and we see her going to visit them, and she has kind of a parasocial, that's kind of the buzzword lately, relationship with a lot of these people. She likes to hang out with them and dance around and get a little playful. And the way the character is drawn reminds me a lot of I can never say your name right. Natasha Lyonne, is that the character from the actress from Russian Doll? That's kind of who I imagined.
Poker Face.
Poker Face, yeah. So basically, there's a lot of her just kind of hanging out. She's I can't tell if she's smoking a joint or if it's a vaping. But she's having a good time. She puts on some music. But her favorite of them is a deceased serial killer. Where's the name?
That choking guy, is that it? Oh,
yeah.
The sundown choker.
Sundown choker, yes. Yeah. So a serial killer who would find young single moms and choke them with their kids' toys. Yeah. Delightful.
Yeah.
And so that guy's her favorite. She kind of is a little obsessive with him, I would say. Probably a little bit. Anyways, we come to find out that she is actually married, but her and her husband aren't really connecting very well, to put it mildly.
There's some indication of maybe even abuse because she has a bruise on her eye.
Yes, that is also true. Anyways, we do get like a scene of them at dinner, and they're obviously not really paying attention to each other. And she's talking about the horror movie she just watched, and he's not into it. Sometimes you have to know your spouse's limits, or at least what they're into. Anyway, so she gets an idea to use the cadaver of the serial killer to. This part, I wasn't entirely sure the mechanics of this.
I appreciate that because I too, like they said that he was basically forgotten, that nobody was talking or thinking about him anymore. And that she was going to use the serial killer. She was going to kill her husband, and she does. And she was going to use the serial killer to put his prints on the knife and smear blood with his hand on the wall. And somehow the police would think he did it, which seemed odd because however much he's forgotten, it seems that the police know he's dead.
Right.
So I went with it.
Yeah. But at some point you have to go with it. But on a practical level, I'm sure there's more anonymous people that she could have chosen from the cadavers, because she specializes in unclaimed cadavers, of people that no one other wants to take care of or doesn't have anyone to take care of them. You'd think she'd choose the most anonymous John Doe possible.
And this is literally the least anonymous person.
Yeah.
The only reason he's there is that his sister didn't want to claim him and said she's
such a monster. Yeah.
In hell.
Right. So The only explanation from a story perspective is that she's just so obsessed with him that she wants to like have this act with him. Like she's obviously not a well-minded person. So
yeah, I guess we can go. Yeah.
So you could kind of blame it on that to a degree, but again, also like why does she need to leave fingerprints? I don't know.
I mean, yeah.
I guess maybe to throw people off of her trail.
Yeah, I think that part is sound.
Yeah, so she tries to have a whole alibi. Anyway, so she goes through with the murder. She takes the cadaver. She places the knife in his hand and rubs his hand all over. But then suddenly the cadaver comes to life and attacks her.
I sent a slight question mark at the end of the sentences, and I too had that slight question mark. But again, I went with it. I will say these story points, a little bumpy.
Mm-hmm.
But the story itself was well told and well drawn, and
right.
I rolled with it. But yeah,
well, I mean, so the kind of the setup of a spouse trying to do something dubious to cover up murdering their partner is a very classic EC trope. So I'm all there for that. I feel like we just needed a little bit more, like how he came back. Like, was there a magic pendant? Or like, did he freeze? Maybe he like fell in a frozen river and he's been unknowingly in stasis this entire time. Like, even if it's kind of a BS reason, at least give us some reason. And here he just kind of sits up out of nowhere.
If you threw it at me and you threw the script on my desk, say, figure this out. How does this guy come? The way I would do it to keep the most, keep the story theirs is just, I wouldn't have him be the sundown choker. I would have him be involved in something a little mystic or supernatural, that he was killing for some reason to harness the energy of bad people or something, and thus this thing might.
Right.
Or give him some sort of supernatural basis, and then I can't ask any questions after that. It's like, well,
exactly. Hey. Or like maybe just he was in something where he's in contact with the blood, revives him. At least give us like there was something.
Well, I even rolled with it, but or that she's crazy,
or she is just crazy,
because she is a little nutty, but it's still enjoyable, but
so and then he like puts on a suit and is kind of a walking cadaver and grabs car keys and walks out. That part's kind of funny. I thought that was kind of humorous. And then the whole time there's a narration, and we come to find out it's actually him. So somehow he's been narrating the story this whole time, which again makes you think he was never really dead because he's been in this cold container in storage for so long. So again, I would lead into some cryo,
sort of a Fry from Futurama kind of thing going on.
Yeah, or like Demolition Man, that kind of thing.
Buck Rogers, classic.
So again, there's a couple storylines, but again, I love the art in this. It's very macabre. She's kind of a really fun character. I like her a lot.
The tone was terrific. I mean, like the dialogue was great and the narration's great. It's just these like little factual things that are a little bumpy.
Right. And it really depends on what kind of reader you are. I'm a very logical reader. I just need something to connect the dots. I don't need to be perfect. But for me, in the story sense, I need something.
You know what? You know where I'm. I can be that way as somebody who has been. I think any writer in television or film is eventually, or even comics, you're going to get hit with some sort of logic screw up you did. I will say, and it's something I love about, and I think are brilliant about EC comics across the genres, are the brevity of the stories. Are so amazing that when they work, they're tight, but when they don't work, or that there's parts of them that don't work, I'm more forgiving on it because they've only taken 8-10 pages of my life away. And even then, it's very easy. Like they didn't spend an hour and then it doesn't make sense at the end. So
there's two lines they have going right now. They have this one and they have another one. It's called Cruel Universe, which is kind of like a more science fiction-y, same kind of stories, but more the science fiction bend. And then the last issue, there's one story that's only like 2 pages long, but you don't know that when you're reading it. So like, it's really brief, but you're like, oh wait, That was the punchline comes out of nowhere, and you're like, okay,
So it's a right facing page. You turn it and it's over.
Yep. Yeah. So that one's really fun. I really enjoy that one. All right.
Yeah. Of all the EC comics, I was really into Two-Fisted Tales.
Yeah.
That was one that I have collections here. So
nice. All right, our next segment is called a Blood Type, and here is a vampire story. Sorry, no zombies this time. There is a good zombie in the episode number 2. There's a good zombie bit. But here we got a vampire, and she's sucking some blood in this street alley, but then she gets discovered and has to go on the run, and the only way out she can find is by jumping on some sort of boat. I don't know if it's a yacht or exactly how you clarify it.
I think it is a yacht.
Yeah, so which is funny because for this week's podcast, we're watching the movie Dead Calm, which takes place almost entirely on the yacht. So I just thought that was funny. I'm doing 2 yacht-related shows. Anyways,
she first yacht rock into them.
Yeah, there we go. Some yacht rock. So of course, the first person she kills when she gets there is the captain. So they've got no way to navigate this thing. And I guess there's 4 people who are the passengers, and they don't know how to use the boat. That's what they hire the captain for. So she makes them think that she's, quote, the safety officer, which is pretty funny in and of itself. But they're kind of stupid, and they just kind of go along with it. And I guess the ship is going down, so she brings out a lifeboat. And of course, she has to bring out some covering for her because she's a vampire, so she can't be in daylight. So she gets them all to abandon ship. They're all in this little dinghy, and they're kind of stranded. And then she comes up with a great idea because they have no food or water, that they start drinking each other's blood. Because that's somehow they think that's a good idea.
Yeah, but it's not a good idea because
it's mostly salt.
Apparently, I learned that it's the third as salty as salt water.
Oh, really?
So, I think she says this. And she puts out a flare and finds a big tanker ship to rescue her.
Right after. So basically, she's drained all the blood she can from all the other people. And she uses the flare, and the bigger ship finds her. Bigger ship, more people.
Yeah, it's essentially like a buffet on a cruise. So
kind of like a last voyage of the Demeter situation.
Yeah, I guess, vampires at sea. I really like the art. I mean, I liked it all, but I thought the art was like, kind of Bruce Timm, kind of that walking that line between sort of cartoony and literal, and it was a cool voice. She's an interesting character.
Yeah, I like her character. I like she's got like some cool tattoos. I thought the I guess we call them yuppies. Maybe this is an eat the rich kind of situation. I would love to see more of her picking off each one of them. Like, what was their reaction when they're like, "Oh, I guess she bit off another person."
Yeah, I mean, again, maybe the brevity on this one didn't work for it. I mean, it was a cool sort of, kind of simple thing, but she was such a cool character, and the situation was so cool. You could have gotten some tension in there, some suspense. That's one of the hardest things to do when you don't have time to build suspense, because, with suspense, you're waiting for that thing to happen. There's no time to wait for anything. Though it does say at the end, it says the end with a question mark. So maybe we will be seeing more of her.
That'd be cool ongoing thing.
She keeps it light. She keeps it very light. She's pretty funny.
I just thought it would have been even better to watch her kind of playing with them even more while they're stranded on there. She's like, oh, well, I guess this guy is bone dry. Who's next? That kind of thing. Or seeing like their horrified reaction to when they realize what's happening. They kind of yada over that.
And for them to jump into it and not, see those moments before they're jumping into it. And and also maybe not to notice her fangs. That might be a thing.
It's a light and breezy story. There's not much really to go into there.
No.
All right.
But good for what it was.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It was very good for what it was. You know, it was like light and breezy with a body count.
Yeah.
So
Our last segment is called a crossroads repetition. So we have it looks like a janitor working at a college, and looks like he's sitting in on a lecture. I don't know if this is like humanities or mythology or literature. Basically, he's talking about Dante's Inferno and how it's built around 9 circles of hell, and how hell is supposed to be a repetitive circular symbology. And this guy's kind of sitting in on it, and they talk about the legend of Robert Johnson. Am I saying that right? Yeah,
that's right.
And who I've been very interested in for a long time. I remember hearing about him for the first time when I was in high school, the legend of Robert Johnson. And actually I was listening to some of his music earlier. Basically it's like, there's an old trope. I mean, it's an old mythology of someone making a deal with the devil for more power. But I think what's cool about Robert Johnson is it's the first time that we've had that story, but with the results of that we still have. They can still listen to his music. Like, oh, this is like devil's music in a way. They are inspired or enhanced, if you believe in that mythology.
Or the devil deal was that he made him the best guitar player ever.
Exactly. Which has been like a part of rock and roll ever since.
And the I guess 80s movie Crossroads.
Yeah.
With Ralph Macchio.
Is that, I think that's even what's his name? Walter, is that Walter Hill or
sound right? I remember, I only remember the least important thing. I think Steve Vai played.
Yeah, Steve Vai,
the devil's guitarist.
It's Walter Hill, who's again, circle back is another was a major producer on Tales from the Crypt. So it all kind of comes together. And we're not talking about the Britney Spears movie either.
Well, I mean, they're very similar.
Right.
One thing I was reading this story, and I'm like, man, and this art is so derivative of Charlie Adlard. Like, it just looks, I mean, it's really good, but it looked like they just totally ripped him off. And then I looked and Charlie Adlard drew it, drew most issues of Walking Dead. So I don't know if you orchestrated that, but I was able to name that.
Anyways, so I'm a little fuzzy on the narrative, so help me out here. So it looks like the janitor, he finds his wife with a lover, and he shoots her, he shoots his wife.
Well,
I'm a little confused on who shot
I think he's the one. He's the one with the lover.
Okay.
Says, what about your wife?
Okay.
Well, wait.
So I think okay, the lover is saying to him, "What about your wife?" And then the wife catches him and shoots him, or shoots herself.
Actually, it's going to shoot both of them. Shoots the woman he was with. This is, I believe.
Okay, so
on the third page, and then she has the gun under her chin, so she winds up killing herself as well.
So she kills the mistress and herself, and then the husband goes to a crossroads and encounters Robert Johnson as the devil, apparently, and makes a deal to switch places, or he wants his wife back.
It's a monkey situation.
Yeah, which makes them switch places. So he's the one who got murdered, and his wife comes back. And then at the end,
whenever you make a deal with the devil,
right?
Just a public service announcement. Be very specific.
Yes.
Don't just say, "I want my wife back." You got to really lay out the terms. That's on him. Anyways, I'm sorry.
No. I love a good devil's paw story. Like, one of my all-time favorite Simpsons is when Homer starts making deals with the devil.
Oh yeah.
And the turkey's dry. It's One of my all-time favorite lines.
Yeah, the sandwich.
Yeah. All right, so they switch places, and then the ending is the same, but now the wife is the janitor, and so we're kind of redoing the start of the story, so we've kind of come full circle.
So in that, I guess your sort of alternative universe interpretation that she was cheating on him probably happened.
And is she going to go to the crossroads and try to
switch
places? So, and then they're going to keep switching places for eternity.
Yeah, it's kind of a heavy Groundhog's Day.
Right. Well, but that's an interesting twist in the Groundhog's Day, where you every time you switch places with another person, you got switching.
It's a two-hander, yeah.
And then of course we end because we're talking about. I was going to say
Face Off Groundhog's Day.
Face Off Groundhog's Day. There we go. And of course, the last panel of comic, at least on this first, the artwork goes, is the exact same as the first panel. So we've come literally full circle. This is an interesting one. I think the narrative could have been fleshed out because, again, as you can see, we it took two of us to kind of piece it together a little bit. I think I like the artwork, but I think they could have made it a little easier to get the finer nuances of what's happening in the story.
There's a couple critical panels that, especially they do the panels in sort of the same kind of. It's sort of it's not quite. It's sort of a burgundy kind of tone.
Yeah,
and everything to sort of signify what happened, but you lose a little detail.
Especially since there's very little dialogue.
Maybe if we had paper, though, maybe a PDF
paper would make more sense. So I'll give it some credit for that. But for a story that's very much more visual than it is verbal, like it's really on the visuals to tell the story. And I feel like it needed, sometimes I feel like it needs an extra panel in between things to kind of help the audience.
It's beautiful art, though, and the coloring was good. It's that one burgundy choice that might have been, but again, maybe on paper will be great, but definitely a standout as far as the art goes. It's really gorgeous.
And I'm a sucker when people start talking mythology and the nature of hell and all that stuff. That's always interesting. It's always good fodder.
And when it starts, I'm sure it's going to be about the professor. They're talking about the professor, and it's a hard left turn. I thought it was a pretty cool story.
Yeah. Oh, you think the professor's the devil?
Oh, I don't, but no, maybe, I guess. I just, they're talking about Professor Richmond. He's a scholar, and
okay.
It just feels like, it's going to be about him, and it's the janitor, and it's, I don't know, it's very interesting the way it goes.
Okay. That would have been a twist if it was the professor giving the lecture who was somehow demonic.
Well, he might be.
Yeah.
I mean, that lecture hall might be hell.
Yeah. Trust me, I'm sure many lecture halls could be hell.
It's Matheson lecture hall, so I was trying to think of Richard Matheson if he had any stories that sort of overlaid this. And
from Twilight Zone writings. Yeah, it's funny because I was half expecting it to be like William Gaines Hall. They like to do that kind of thing. So I'm curious if there's another tie-in.
There might be. I mean, I'm not an expert on Matheson, but he wrote a lot. So, but a good issue, I think. I think a good issue.
Yeah, I mean, you're coming from it for having not read any of the other ones. From my perspective, this might be like on the continuum. This might be my least favorite of the three so far. There's definitely worse stories in some of the other ones, but there's definitely better stories as well. So I feel like the overall level of stories here is a little bit, on the average, a little bit less than I think some of the other two issues. And again, this is my opinion, but with more context.
I'm curious to take a look at the other ones because I wouldn't say these like hit hard, but they went down easy. I mean,
yeah,
I didn't regret reading it.
No, not at all. Are you gonna? So you think this might inspire you to read some of the other ones?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, the next time I'm in a comic store, next time I get up to, there's a lot of comic stores that are closing. So I have to go farther and farther away now. But next time I'm in there, I think I'll probably wait for the collection because
right.
Probably by the time we get there.
Hey, if I made one more person interested to read them, I consider success.
I am interested, and I'm seeing Greg Nicotero soon, and it seems like up his alley. Granted, Crypt is probably a direct competitor, so maybe he'll feel different.
Yeah.
I don't know.
People have been keep asking me if we're going to start talking about the Crypt Show comic book, and I'm interested. I still have the time to run a movie podcast and a full comic book podcast. So
I think you take it easy.
But I'm very interested in, again, if they come out with a full paperback, compendium, I'll definitely read that. Because I like to just kind of blast through.
Yeah, it's skybound, so I'm sure they will.
The same way I haven't read a single issue of Walking Dead, but I've read the big books, because that way I can just get through the story quicker.
Yeah, I mean, Robert is a genius at making you want to read the next issue.
Right.
And I think the compendiums were too irresistible to people because of the weight. He's there's a lot of comics like this, but I think he's created one of the most notable binge comics ever. The stories I hear of people ripping through those compendiums in a day or two. So.
Yeah, definitely. And while we're at it, I'm also a big fan of. I haven't read the comics yet, but I've watched the show Invincible, and I really want to go back and read those as well.
Oh yeah, that too. I mean, it's the same thing. The twist on that show, or rather that comic book, both, they're just they make you want to read the next one the same day. So
yeah, I think I watched the TV show in 2 days. I could not stop watching. So
that's what he does.
All right. Quite good. Well, Scott, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything you want to plug? Anywhere you want people to come to follow you?
I don't know. I don't know if people. I don't know when this is coming out, but
it'll probably come out Wednesday.
Oh well, then on the 29th, September 29th, that's the premiere of Walking Dead: Daryl Dixon.
Nice.
People should check that out. It's actually the first season is available on Netflix right now. And in fact, there's a lot of Walking Dead goodness available on Netflix and also AMC Plus. So yeah.
Do you have any non-Walking Dead projects you want to talk about? Or you want to hold off on that?
They're all gestating, but there's a bunch of them. But there's nothing currently out there. But man, it'd be cool to have something else out there. I love Walking Dead, but it's been fun. I'm working on a number of projects that are not Walking Dead, but a good number of them are with Walking Dead people, whether they be actors or people behind the scenes. So yeah, hopefully I got something to talk about on that side soon. All right.
Well, if you're interested, you always come back and plug whatever you got going on. But again, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate everyone for listening. Would really appreciate if everyone would give us a rating review on iTunes or a rating on Spotify, like and subscribe on YouTube. You can always check us out on TikTok at Dads from the Crypt Talk. With that, I thank you for listening to Dads from the Crypts.
Follow Dads from the Crypt on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or I will follow you to the grave. No, seriously, you really should watch. But be careful what you ask for. You may get it.